think you click a button and you don't click a button. All right. Welcome to Soccer's Morning Show. We'll try it again. I'm good for what? Once a week, hitting the wrong button. Once a week, maybe. So, yeah, today was that day, hitting the wrong button. Welcome to Soccer's Morning Show. Apologies for 9:07. It's what happens when you think you hit a button and you don't hit a button. So, we got a lot of stuff to talk about this morning. Atlanta United, when this show ends this morning, Atlanta United and Cruz Azul will be going in preseason friendly type stuff for Atlanta United. Cruz Azul behind closed doors, the final of 2 preseason friendlies for Atlanta United. Closed, no live stream, no fans. So as we go through it and get ready for this morning, what are you looking for out of Atlanta United today? Other than the everybody get out healthy and get back here so we can get ready for the AmFam Cup coming up in a week's time. Other than everybody being healthy, what are you looking for? That's one of the big questions that we'll have this morning. Anything else on your mind this morning? There's a lot of news this morning that we can get into as well. Morning, Alex. Glad to have you here. And morning, Coco. So, yes, opening kickoff brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee, kickoffcoffeeco.com. And there's the QR code for those of you who are watching on Twitch. Blotting out my face as always. A lot of folks say that's an improvement. But opening kickoff, Atlanta United, Cruz Azul, 11 o'clock. What are you looking for? What are you looking for from Atlanta United here in this match? Just growth? Everybody get healthy? What are you looking for? Gonzalo Pineda, when he caught up with Jason, and by the way, if you do not listen to Atlanta Soccer Tonight, put that on your bookmarks, whatever the kids do these days when it comes to making sure that they get to listen to things. If you're not listening live on 92.9 The Game, then pick it up on your favorite podcatchers, on the Odyssey app. When Jason caught up with Atlanta United head coach Gonzalo Pineda, it's, how do you push through in altitude? That was one of the things. You obviously you hit a wall in these situations. Morning, Will. How do you respond after you hit that wall? That's one of the things. Obviously, you want everybody to be healthy. Machop Chol at the 9. It was one of the things that he wanted to take a look at, knowing that he's got some players that can play multiple positions. When you've got a player that is a unicorn like Chop, you put him up there up top, what can he do? I mean, we saw in Chattanooga his work on the left-hand side causing some problems for Chattanooga FC. Can he continue to do that? And does he do it on the wing? Does he do it at the 9? The way that it was posed, it looks like substitutions might happen, say, 65, 70 minutes in. So you're looking, your starting lineup's going to go 65, 70 minutes as they continue to get their conditioning squared away. So you've got that. Second team probably checking in the 65th minute, 70th minute. So it's probably something like 65-25, 70-20 when it comes to lineups. Going up against Cruz Azul 11 o'clock this morning. So opening kickoff, what are you guys looking for today? Even though we can't look, what would you like to see, or what would you like to hear about after the match? Other than everybody getting healthy and coming back here for AmFam 2 Electric Boogaloo in a week's time. So that's the questions that we've got for Atlanta United. And once again, you've got the matchup against Cruz Azul. You have AmFam Cup 2. You have the match in St. Louis against St. Louis City SC behind closed doors. And then you got the season. Yeah, and Sam, I know. You're not alone about seeing the signing of Georgios Giacomakis. Say that 10 times fast. But, once again, you want to make things the officially official, because you're looking at work visas, ITCs, international transfer certificates, those kinds of things, P1s, and you just want to make sure that everything is locked in place. And so, yeah, Sam, you are not alone, but I think it's just a formality and a matter of time. Will wants to see the first team hold their own, and you want to see Giakoumakis. So we'll see. We'll see what goes on with Atlanta United. So that is the question to the floor this morning. With Atlanta United, what are you hunting for from this match from Cruz Azul that we will only be able to keep an eye on through the Twitters and social media? So make sure that you got all your bookmarks. 11 o'clock is when the match is supposed to start with Atlanta United and Cruz Azul. So we'll keep an eye on that through social media. Programming notes today. Might have some guests come on, our standard Wednesday guests. One of them is on a work trip. So we'll see what happens there. Will this individual be able to steal away and talk about stuff? And, if Dylan Butler from MLS Soccer and OSDB Sports is not mired in high school basketball, and because we're getting close to playoff time with region play and all that kind of stuff, hopefully Dylan can join us at 10 o'clock, and we'll see if Bart can join us later today as well. But as you well know, Bart has a golden ticket, so whenever Bart can hop in, there are some things that I want to talk to Bart about. She Believes Cup is 1. Atlanta United is 2. And for those that, Rich, we got that sound. I'm going to play that in just a little bit. You got Mark Geiger, and this was really interesting. Really interesting. Mark Geiger had some advice for young officials, and the idea of, okay, so if you want to be a young official, here's what you do. And it was really, really interesting. And I wanted to get Bart's thoughts on what Mark Geiger thinks for young officials to become the better officials and be part of the process and continue to grow and evolve the game. And so those were a couple of things. So next time Bart is on the show, we're going to talk Mark Geiger. We're going to talk She Believes, and we're going to talk about Atlanta United. So that's on the table this morning. Obviously, anything on the table this morning for you guys that's on your minds as we go. And Amelia, usually work visas done as a process. It's so silence is weird. Nothing to do about announcing unless there's. I don't see an unusual problem, but sometimes it just takes a little longer than others. Is the advice? Yeah, is the advice for Atlanta United? Don't do it. Okay, we'll see. But like I said, but once again, 5 stripe. And the thing is, since we didn't get to see the Atlante game, we don't know what happened, except for I think the one video that happened on Facebook. So we're kind of hamstrung when it looks at like what we're trying to see. So we'll keep an eye on that as we go. Of course, preseason, be able to see the preseason matches. I think that's a byproduct of the new contract that we have. So we'll keep an eye on that. Will wants to see more of Machope at the 9. Makes me think Conway might not be the answer behind Giakoumakis. So like I said, once again, these are the questions that we have. So we'll see where that is. Medicals, David, I think with Giakoumakis' medical specifically, that was something that it was done so long ago. And I think he went back home to get it done that, like I said, it's probably somewhere in the pipeline, however long that pipeline is. I'm not overly concerned. And so we'll just see what happens with the signing that we have been told it's there. So we'll just see when it comes to paperwork and stuff. So that's where we are. I know a lot of folks want to see Giakoumakis, and so we'll see. And David, Chol has struggled to stay healthy. And one of the biggest things there is, and this is part and parcel to what happened last year at training camp with Chop getting injured and George Campbell getting injured in training camp last year. It put them further back, and it really put Machope's development back last year. So a healthy Machope Chol, that is what we're looking for. And so among other things. But like I said, let me know what's on your mind this morning. It is a Wall Pass Wednesday. Like I said, it doesn't have to be anything involving Atlanta United, because there's a lot of news out there that we're going to go through this morning. And we'll roll through it all. We will roll through it all. Something breaks. I'm sure that Ricky will be the first one to see it, and he'll post it in the Twitch pitch, so I can go chasing after it, or faster at social media than I am, Ricky Ricardo. But that's your opening kickoff. What are you looking for from this match today that we can't watch against Cruz Azul? Closed door. Here's your QR code once again from our friends at Kickoff Coffee, kickoffcoffeeco.com. And use the code soccer down here 15 with our friends from Kickoff Coffee, and they in turn take 10% of the proceeds and reinvest them into the youth game. Really cool stuff from our friends at Kickoff Coffee. Kickoff Coffee CO on social media, kickoffcoffeeco.com. Now, I know how you roll, Ricky. Like I said, you're faster on social media than I am. So whenever something breaks, you usually get there and you're sending us down that rabbit hole. Rich Ransom linked to an article from Jonathan Tannenwald on social media. Jim Curtin, getting into the news of the day, Jim Curtin was on the Crack podcast with DeMarcus Beasley et al. And was asked about the U.S. men's national team. And it was a really interesting response from Jim Curtin when he was asked on the Crack podcast, which is DeMarcus Beasley, Gucci Onyewu, Mauricio Wilson of Footballer Clothing. The three of them had Jim Curtin on, and he was asked about the U.S. men's national team. So here's what Jim Curtin said, courtesy of the Crack podcast itself. And it was a really interesting answer from Jim Curtin.
One man's misery is another man's opportunity. Are you eyeing that U.S. job?
You know what? Of course, I'd love to coach the national team if that's what you're asking. But I said this before, and I mean what I say when I say it. Whoever they choose, if they choose Jose Mourinho, if they choose Ancelotti, if they choose Jesse Marsch, I'd be their assistant. You know what I mean? Like, that's how important I think this World Cup is. And I think that's how we all have to approach it. You would leave your head coaching job to be a U.S. assistant. Yes.
Yep. That was the last thing that he said. So Jim Curtin has put it out there on the Crack podcast, DeMarcus Beasley, Gucci Onyewu, Mauricio Wilson, that if presented with the opportunity, he'd jet. That's how much it means to him. So we'll see. We'll see how things continue to develop. And I know, Rich, when it comes to the union, I'm fairly confident in the notion of if you promoted the coach from Union 2, you would be cool with just that kind of you'd be cool with that kind of an idea because of the system being what it is. Marlon LeBlanc, if he were promoted from, and I don't want Jose anywhere near the USMNT either, Sam. I'm right there with you. But I think if Marlon LeBlanc was promoted, I don't think that you'd miss a step. Obviously, things might be looked at a little differently. The approach might be a little different, but the philosophy would be the same. I think, and I know that Rich, and I'll ask you this, as our resident Philadelphia Union flag waver. And by the way, the scarf that you gave me, it's over here in the office. It's over there. Look at it every morning. If Marlon LeBlanc was your head coach, if Jim Curtin went to the national team, obviously you couldn't begrudge him that. I know that we talked about it yesterday, one versus two, 1A, 1B, Jesse Marsch, Jim Curtin, whomever, whatever combination that is. I think it would be safe to say, Rich, that if Curtin left and you went, all right, so you've answered my question. LeBlanc's a great coach, but not a like for like. No, but I think that at the same time, I think that the philosophy that the union have, you would not lose that. You wouldn't lose that continuity, say, if Marlon LeBlanc were promoted, Jim Curtin went on to national pastures. I think the philosophy would remain in place. And you've got everything in place with the academy and all of that growth from within. It's just trying to bring those pieces in from the outside. I think the philosophy would be the same. Burned. Curtin's a good dude to be a good assistant, but please know Jesse Marsch as head coach, that would be a colossal mistake. And that is the main element here in all of this. I know a lot of folks, the second that Jesse Marsch was sacked at Leeds, which I think was a mistake, and for those of you that missed yesterday's show, sacking Jesse Marsch. You bring in Reuter. You bring in, oh, man. You bring in Reuter. You bring in players. You bring in Weston McKennie. So you've got Aronson, Adams, McKinney, and Emilio. Very nice. Emilio diving's diving. Nothing will change. You bring in 4 players in the transfer window. You loan 6 out. That's what you ended up doing at Leeds in the January window. Yet you only give Marsch 1 match with these incomings all in place that you made at the deadline, by the deadline. And you only have Reuter and you only have your subs come in for 20 minutes. And you sit there and it's like, yep, we're done. And we analyzed it, we analyzed it during the show on Monday, where you end up with 3 teams around you winning, the margins closing, you're out of the relegation zone by goal difference. I get it. You panicked. Leeds front office panicked. Jesse Marsch was hard done by. But now, Rich, Marsch for sporting or technical director, Curtin for head coach. And Rich, and there goes the back and forth with Atlanta United and Philadelphia Union. This is what I love. And for Atlanta United, crying is also still crying. Good morning, Rich. So, and this is one of the lightning rods of this now. Jesse Marsch, Jim Curtin, and an open position. 2 open positions. Yes, morning, Rich. Hi. What do you do in trying to find a head coach for the men's national team? The deal is that there won't be a head coach until there's a sporting director. And then the sporting director sets the tone, figures out the philosophy, where you want to go, and then you get the guy that you want to bring in to be head coach for the men's national team. This is the key in all of this. Nothing is going to happen, and U.S. Soccer has said so. Nothing is going to happen until the sporting director is named. So the beauty of all of this conjecture that we have, all of this stuff that we're talking about, nothing is going to happen until there's a sporting director. Rich is proposing Jesse Marsch for said gig, sporting or technical director, and then you bring in Jim Curtin for head coach. So there it is. Now the Super Bowl chatter, the Roman numeral classic chatter, because I don't want to get us in any trouble here by mentioning the competition by name. Roman numeral classic chatter, and that's always a good thing too. We'll get into that on Friday. We'll see what you guys think about that on Friday as a part of Freestyle Friday. So Jim Curtin is interested in the national team, even as an assistant. Keep that in mind. And thanks to our friends at the Crack Podcast for A, asking the question, B, getting the answer from Jim Curtin that you did, and C, now giving all of us stuff to talk about when it comes to Jim Curtin and Jesse Marsch. And Tom Bogert also said yesterday that, a lot of us were adding 1 and 1 and trying to come up with 2, and not so fast, because once again, sporting director first, then you come in with your staff and your head coach and all that kind of stuff. Marsch failed at Leipzig, burned. Leipzig and Leeds. Why would he get rewarded with the national team job? When Tedesco took over Leipzig from Marsch, same squad, had the highest points per game in the league, remainder of the season. Jesse's a fraud as a coach. Nice guy, but not competent. We also have news about Tedesco. Tedesco was named as the new head coach to replace Roberto Martinez. Left RB Leipzig back in September. The deal runs until after the 24 Euros in Germany. So he told the Royal Belgian Football Association's website, quote, "For me, it's a great honor to be the new head coach of Belgium. I'm really looking forward to the task, extremely motivated, had a very good feeling right from the first conversation," end quote. 37-year-old, born in Rossano, grew up in Germany, coached at Schalke and Spartak Moscow, out of work since leaving Leipzig. Martinez had a 6.5-year run as Belgium's manager. in their golden generation. Best World Cup finish, third in Russia 2018. They lost out in the group stage back in the last World competition. Lost to Morocco. Goalless draw in Croatia. So, of course, that means that Roberto Martinez gets to go to Portugal now. Belgium opened their 24 European Championship qualifying campaign with an away match against Sweden in Stockholm on March 24th. So Tedesco is Martinez's replacement. So we'll see where that goes, specifically Roberto Martinez. So, like I said, so we'll see. And like I said, ain't nothing happening with a coach until you come up with a technical director, sporting director first. Then that individual gets to sit there and say, okay, coach. No different than any other sport we've attached to, where you get a GM in, new GM brings in the individual that he or she wants to be head coach, position of power, whatever. So nothing's going to happen. As much as we talk about the idea of, say, Jesse Marsh and or Jim Curtin, nothing is going to happen until a sporting director's named. It's going to be a little bit, and then they'll figure it out. So that's your latest when it comes to Jesse Marsh and the future of the men's national team, with Jim Curtin announcing on a show that, yeah, he's interested, even if it's to be an assistant. That's what it means to him. So we'll see. That was, once again, I give Jim Curtin a lot of credit. He's never one to hold anything back when it comes to any of his thought patterns. So not a shock that this happened from Jim Curtin, but tip of the hat to the Crack Podcast for getting it on the record. Speaking of on the record, I don't know if you guys saw this morning. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff to talk about this morning, a lot of different things. This is from Ali Walker at Politico Europe. I think this is the first time that we've had Politico Europe referenced on the show. And yesterday, we were talking about the 100th World Cup. Morning, OG. Anything on the board for anybody who's hopped in late? Anything on the board? It's a Wall Pass Wednesday. Atlanta United, 11 o'clock. We'll be off the air by then, so we can all follow along on social media. Maybe 11:05, because unless something happens in the first 5 minutes, they might be just kicking the ball around, just getting started. Expectations for Atlanta United today. What were you hoping to find out information-wise, since we can't watch it? So we're just going to have to watch on social media what's going on with Atlanta United. So once again, that's the main question. Wall Pass Wednesday, Atlanta United, 11 o'clock, Cruz Azul, behind closed doors. We'll follow along on social media and see what happens. But yesterday we were talking about the 100th, the centennial competition to celebrate the world's best in 2030. And it was, pretty much thought of by a lot of us here on the show and a lot of you on the Twitch pitch that Uruguay should be a part of it. 4 countries are supposed to combine, have an official bid announcement today that they're going to chase after, 4 South American countries chasing after the world competition in 2030. And part of it is Uruguay, considering the competition 100 years ago. Ali Walker at Politico Europe has this out this morning, very, very early this morning. In a blockbuster offer, and I know this will surprise a lot of you. This will shock and stun each and every one of you. Saudi Arabia's Mohammed bin Salman personally told the Greek prime minister that his country would pay for all Greece's World Cup stadia in exchange for joining its bid to host the 2030 World Cup. Saudi Arabia will dip into, and this is Ali Walker's wording, Saudi Arabia will dip into its bulging coffers to, quote, fully underwrite the costs, end quote, of jointly hosting the 2030 tournament with Greece and Egypt. In return, 75% of the matches would be held in the Gulf state, a senior official with knowledge of discussions told Politico. Why? Saudi Arabia is creating a transcontinental coalition with Greece and Egypt to take advantage of FIFA's voting system. If Saudi Arabia can get support from African federations plus Asian countries and siphon off some European votes, it'll stand a strong chance of winning. It's not about sports washing. It's much bigger than that. Quote, the multipolar staging of a World Cup with Egypt and Greece would be neither altruism nor largesse, According to Professor Simon Chadwick, professor of sport and geopolitical economy, Saudi Arabia wants to be at the center of a new world order. Chadwick, quote, Saudi Arabia is strategically trying to position itself as an Afro-Eurasian hub, the center of a new world order. Takeaway from Ali Walker. It's a smart play. But. Mohammed bin Salman's megabucks offer to Greece, reported for the first time here, will fuel criticism that Saudi Arabia is effectively attempting to use its astronomical wealth to buy the World Cup. Required reading today, Politico.eu. It's a story by Ali Walker. So, not surprised one bit that MBS wants to buy the whole friggin' thing. Not a surprise. OG in our Jim Curtin discussion. Be okay with Jim Curtin as MNT coach. It'd get him out of MLS's jerk energy. Would be good for those young guys. And Philly wouldn't change their personality and style too much if he left, right? I wouldn't think so. But, so everybody, Rich, everybody is in favor of Jim Curtin going to the national team. And we were getting into this discussion also, Byrne. Byrne thinks Steve Cherundolo, Greg Vanney, Jim Curtin, Pellegrino Matarazzo are all better American coaches than Jesse Marsh. And I also think they shouldn't limit the search to Americans. No, they shouldn't. Best man for the gig. And we were trying to figure out what U.S. coaches were abroad. You know, David Wagner is abroad right now. And we'd mentioned Matarazzo. But yeah, so you want to bring in the best coach available. And I know that very few of you out there would have that individual being Jose Mourinho. I know. So, no, don't limit your search. Don't limit your search just to be nationalistic. But the national competition in 2030, international competition in 2030, from Ali Walker at Politico, Saudi Arabia is looking to buy everybody off. Told the Greek prime minister he's going to pay for all Greece's World Cup stadia in exchange for joining the bid to host the 2030 World Cup. Greece, Egypt, Saudi Arabia. Politico.eu is where the story is this morning. So let's see if I can type Politico without any kind of errors. So Politico.eu, that's where the story is that we're looking at from Ali Walker about wanting to be a part of the 2030 World Championship competition and have them be one of the three nations that's attached. So there's that. Also this morning from The Guardian, don't know if you guys saw this. It appears the Emir of Qatar is interested in buying Manchester United for £4.5 billion. From Jamie Jackson at The Guardian, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani is now in the race with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. And there is an apparent solution that is going to be needed. And it's over the existing QSI ownership of PSG. We'll get into that here in just a sec. Ben Jacobs from our friends at Caught Offside Arsenal have made Declan Rice their top summer target. Gunners currently the favorites, but don't rule out Chelsea. So that's Ben Jacobs this morning about Declan Rice. So Jamie Jackson over at The Guardian and the Emir of Qatar. He values the club below the Glazer family £6 billion price. Recognition UEFA may have to agree to a regulation change as they already own PSG. The Emir purchased PSG back in 2011 through QSI, Qatar Sports Investment. Current UEFA rules do not allow clubs with the same owners to face each other in one of its competitions. So if, say, Manchester United and PSG were in the same competitions, they would not be allowed to compete in a, say, Champions League tie if that fixture was to arise. The purchase of United is being explored. Understood those driving the Qatari interest are conscious of UEFA rules, and a solution's being sought. It could include trying to persuade UEFA to consider the possibility of adjusting or changing the regulations. Glazer family put United up for sale back in November, announcing it's, quote, commencing a process to explore strategic alternatives, potentially bringing it into their 17-year ownership of the club. Rain Group oversaw the sale of Chelsea, has been appointed as the exclusive financial advisor, believes £6 billion is wanted for the 20-time champs of England. The Emir believes 4.5 is a more realistic price. So what is 1.5 over 6, 15 over 60, 25% less. Sir Jim Ratcliffe confirmed his company Ineos was in the running to buy United last month. Lifelong United supporter. Amnesty International has described Qatari interest in United as, quote, another wake-up call to the Premier League in regards to strengthening their ownership rules. From Peter Frankenthal from Amnesty International's UK Economics Affairs Department, he's the director of economic affairs for Amnesty in the UK, quote, coming in the wake of the World Cup and strenuous efforts from the Qatari government to fashion a glitzy new image for the country, it seems highly likely that any Qatari bid for Manchester United would be a continuation of the state-backed sports washing project. Saw only limited reforms on migrant workers' rights in Qatar in the lead-up to the World Cup. There's been no movement whatsoever in ending the disgraceful criminalization of LGBTQ plus people or institutional discrimination against women. It's been nearly 18 months since the hugely controversial Saudi takeover of Newcastle, and the Qatari bid for Manchester United would be yet another wake-up call to the Premier League over the need to reform its ownership rules. We're not necessarily opposed to the involvement of state-linked overseas financial consortia in English football. That's a good Latin plural. But the Premier League must urgently strengthen ownership rules to ensure they're human rights compliant and not an opportunity for more sports washing, end quote. So keep an eye on Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the Emir of Qatar, and QSI's interest in Manchester United. So we'll keep an eye on that this morning. And Ricky Ricardo coming in as always from the top rope. So Rich, once again with Jim Curtin. Y'all just want Curtin to go because you think it'll change the union. You ain't changing for nobody. Leipzig and Salzburg. Just pay what the Glazers want and get him out of my club, Sam Williamson says. So Ricky Ricardo, once again, off the top rope. With the Cup, the U.S. Open Cup has come across news this morning. 2023 Open Cup committee approves VAR in the late stages of the tournament, and they're covering referee costs starting this year. From Jake Sillick over at the cup.us. Keep an eye on this as your favorite team or teams might be making late runs. Decided at their January 6th meeting to implement VAR for the semifinals and finals starting this year. At the same meeting, committee also decided to cover all referee costs for the tournament, increasing the hosting fees to cover the new costs. All committee meeting minutes publicly posted after approval. Important contents of the meeting minutes are in the note that Ricky posted in that link. So if you want to go deep diving after the show, you could do that. Brett Louie, also a D2, D3 pro representative on the committee, resigned back in November, taking the new position of president for Rhode Island FC. So we continue to follow what's going on with Michael Parkhurst and Tidewater in USL Championship. Replacement then named at the January 19th meeting. Jake Edwards, president of the USL, added to the committee. At that meeting, will serve out the rest of Louis' term. Open Cup staff presented the proposed 2023 tournament structure, ended up largely unchanged from 22, alerted that a schedule waiver may be required for some expansion teams. At the next meeting, all three expansion NISA teams require the waiver due to missing the scheduled deadline, along with starting their season within 7 days of their entry into Open Cup. Referee match fees and payments made centrally by U.S. Soccer and not by the teams at the time of the match. Hosting fees increased to cover the fees. Committee discussed financial implications to teams once the handbook is released to the public. They're going to report, our friends at the cup.us are going to report on how much hosting fees have increased for this year's tournament. Adjustment to the prize money rule after Sacramento Republic made their run last year. U.S. Soccer has adjusted the prize money rules so a team may win both the prize as the furthest advancing team in a lower division, plus the money for being a champion or a finalist. Sacramento Republic only received $100,000 as runner-up last season and had to forfeit the $25,000 furthest advancing prize as a D2 squad. A team in their position in the future gets both prizes. VAR, once again, committee voted unanimously to implement the use of VAR semifinals and final. Discussions to continue in the future regarding expansion. And the leagues have asked for clarification regarding their ability to discipline participants and fans for conduct around U.S. Open Cup matches. Committee requested the staff draft an updated policy to reflect that, while Open Cup adjudication and discipline panel is the primary disciplinary body that leagues may issue discipline to their member independent of any action taken by the Open Cup. So, biggest takeaways: VAR in the semifinals and the final now for Open Cup. If you are the team that survives the longest out of anything outside of Division I, then you would get in this new plan, you'd get the money for if you won the tournament, plus you'd get the money for being the lowest divisioned team, if that is a word, lowest divisioned, hyphenated, the lowest division team to make it to the final. So that way you get everything for all of your efforts. You don't have to forfeit anything. The referee match fees and payments made centrally by U.S. Soccer, not by the teams. They're increasing hosting fees. That's good stuff. Tournament structure pretty much the same. And then that's where we are. So late stages of the tournament, VAR, semifinals and final. Referee costs covered starting this year. Very, very cool stuff. And Will is looking for more amateur sides. And, I mean, all of this qualification that we see, I mean, literally you go to websites like the cup.us, I mean, we saw lower level qualifications happening last month. I mean, and it was some teams that we know here in this footprint that were in the lower level classifications to get into the Open Cup to this point. So there you go. And I mean, and I imagine, Will, that you're a fan of the FA Cup, 732 teams, and making sure that it is an all-in tournament. That's my guess. 732, and they're down to the final 16. Wrexham yesterday, and we'll get into that too. Wrexham loses to Sheffield United. Billy Sharp scores twice late. Wrexham missed a penalty that could have given him a 2-1 lead in the second half. Sam Williamson with a question: could you be an assistant coach for the MNT and still coach the Union? I feel it could be possible. Yeah. But I would imagine that even if you pull Jim Curtin's name out of that equation and just say head coach of an MLS side, assistant for national team, I could see it. Would the team itself give that kind of a leeway, or would they want their head coach locked into being a head coach? Would you, as a franchise, trust your assistants and your philosophy if in a window or in a qualifying tournament, your coach is like, I'm out. I got to go coach the national team. I got to go be an assistant. Would a team in a professional league sit there and say, yeah, that's cool. Go ahead. We got your back. We got it covered. Don't know. That's an interesting question, Sam. Will, big fan of the FA Cup. Very much so. Find the DFB Pokal is the best in terms of true cup competitions. Just wish it had more teams like the FA Cup, coming from a Liverpool supporter. And Liverpool will be a constant source of discussion for the remainder of the season, because it looks like Jurgen Klopp's time might be done. I think the message might be getting stale. And, a lot of folks were talking about the loss of Sadio Mane. A lot of folks are talking about the front office changes. I think that the message might just be stale by this point, and it might be time for a change. So a lot of parallels, I think, between the end of Klopp's time in the Bundesliga and what we're seeing now with Liverpool. So you might see next season, or after this season is over, you might see Liverpool, Spurs, how patient are Chelsea, Michael Head, maybe even Manchester City, if things continue in a certain direction. So, I mean, there's a lot on the table that we've got to keep an eye on. And, it's Really, it's going to be a very, very interesting year in the Premier League. Prem and Proper out later today, by the way, to get you catch you up on what happened this weekend, get you ready for what's going to happen this weekend. So Prem and Proper out later today on the network. And West Ham. Wow, man. West Ham, yeah, David Moyes, definitely. And David Moyes probably is going to be out of a job. I mean, literally, if you look at the table right now, and, we'll look at the table for the sake of looking at the table. You look at it and you go, Southampton, Nathan Jones might be gone. Bournemouth, Gary O'Neill might be gone. Everton, you've got Sean Dyche. Leeds, trying to figure out who it's going to be. They've got their top two at the moment. And it's the head coach of Feyenoord, and it is the current head coach at that's Rayo Vallecano. Those are your two at the moment that you're looking at for Leeds. If they had their way, that's what they're looking at. So those are the two on the board right now for Leeds at the top of the ladder for filling out their vacancies. West Ham, yes. Wolves, they signed Lopetegui, so that's not going to happen. Leicester, Knicks, you keeping Brendan Rodgers after this year? Nottingham Forest, so they've signed Steve Cooper to a deal that's like 7,000 and a half years. Crystal Palace, Vieira, you're 12th, you're safe. Villa, Unai Emery brought in. Liverpool, probably different. Chelsea, probably, well, like I said, Chelsea with Potter. I don't know. How patient is Bowley Clearlake? Michael Head with CFC, absolutely no way to predict who'll be coaching or playing at the start of next season. You're not wrong. Fulham, you're safe with Marco Silva. Brentford, Thomas Frank, you better lock him down forever. De Zerbi and Brighton, we've seen it took a little while for De Zerbi and the players to get on the same page, but we see where they are right now. They're 6th. Europe, that's Europa Conference League right now. Spurs, Conte, health. Newcastle, Eddie Howe, fine. Manchester United, Ten Hag, fine. Manchester City depends. And then Arsenal with Unai Emery, fine. So, yeah, there's Sam, you're looking at right now with Chelsea, you're trying to get into Champions League, and you got 10 points to make up. You got 10 points to make up. That's a long way. Will on Klopp. You look at his last year in Dortmund, he was a shell of himself, history repeating. I love Klopp. He gave us everything but look. But look at 14-15 Dortmund. Distant 7th, but out of 18, shell of his cup and league-winning teams, and he looked spent. And he looks spent now. When you're talking to reporters and you don't want to answer a reporter's question coming from that particular reporter, but you'll answer it if it comes from a different reporter in a press conference setting, that you're surly, you're tired, you don't want to answer the question. It just looks like it's the end of the line. So, like I said, I think it's the end of the line for Klopp, and it's going to be a wild season. The run in the Premier League is going to be crazy. Off season is going to be even crazier. Trying to grab managers. I want to see who folks bring in for all of these situations that we've been talking about. Also on the board this morning, we mentioned temporary subs and just how ridiculous FIFA is being about this. The FA, once again, Paul McInnes at The Guardian, the FA is going to push FIFA again for a temporary concussion substitute trial. Going to make a second attempt to get approval from FIFA for trials of concussion subs after proposals were rejected last month, which was stupid. English football's governing body expected to use the AGM of the lawmaking body IFAB, the all-hands-on-deck meeting, on March 4 to restate its view that the Premier League, alongside MLS and Ligue 1, should be allowed to test an alternative method for dealing with head injuries. Push is likely to be met with resistance from FIFA, reinforcing the sense of a split at the top of the game. Once again, this is McInnes' words. This is Paul McInnes' words. Push is likely to be met with resistance from FIFA, reinforcing the sense of a split at the top of the game over how best to treat a crucial issue. FIFA remains committed to trials of permanent concussion subs and cites research among participating club doctors showing a majority felt no changes to the trial protocols were necessary. The FA was once a proponent of permanent substitutes, but the chief exec, Mark Bullingham, has changed his position, stands alongside players' unions and brain injury charities in calling for temporary measures. Premier League has also endorsed temporary subs, citing its survey of club doctors who want temporary subs to be used. When the proposal was submitted for the first time at IFAB's annual business meeting last month, failed to reach a vote after FIFA stuck to its position. FIFA holds a casting vote. Believes permanently taking players off the pitch with suspected concussion is the best way to keep them safe. IFAB is comprised of FIFA and the 4 British football associations. FIFA says if the permanent substitute protocol is properly applied using the credo suspect and protect, then decisions can be made quickly and effectively to protect players. Quickly and effectively with a head injury. Quickly and effectively. You want to take time and care with head injuries. You don't want to do something quickly and effectively. You want to make sure that everything is in place and everything is in one piece and it's done properly. Because there have been too many times in the last handful of years where we have seen clashes of heads. We've seen head injuries. We've seen contact in the sport where an athlete's head hits the turf. Athlete, has a collision with another athlete. And they convince, or the doctor is convinced, that the athlete should stay in when, in fact, that athlete has no business being out there. None. Take your time, do it right. Back to McInnes. It also aired concerns that temporary subs could be gamed by teams looking to obtain a competitive advantage. Proponents of temporary subs fear the risk of losing a player permanently puts extra pressure on club doctors, means players are more likely to insist on playing on. Last year, the chief executive of IFAB, Lucas Brood, told The Guardian permanent protocols were not being properly applied by the clubs taking part in the trials. Quote, if you don't take a player off, no protocol will help you. After last month's meeting of the International Players Union, FIFPro, in conjunction with the World League's Forum, said they were greatly disappointed with the decision and would consider our options in opposing the move. The head of brain health at the Professional Footballers Association, Dr. Adam White, said, quote, we believe the introduction of temporary concussion subs is now increasingly seen as a common sense measure to better protect players. Many will rightly ask, if not now, when? So, FA is going to push FIFA once again for temporary sub trials. Keep an eye on that. We mentioned FA Cup. Wrexham, apparently, according to Billy Sharp, after Sharp scored twice in the waning minutes, Billy Sharp said that Wrexham had been disrespectful in the build-up to their FA Cup, and Billy Sharp taunted the Wrexham fans with wiping imaginary tears from his eyes at full time. Accused Sharp, and then Wrexham, Phil Parkinson denied, the head coach of Wrexham, denied the allegations, and then accused Sharp of being disrespectful himself. Sharp, 2, Sanderberga scored 1, 3-1, so now they get Tottenham next round. Sharp goes again, then he just launches into a tirade, saying he was glad they knocked Wrexham out after what he perceived to be a disrespectful approach from some of the players. Quote, told ITV post-match. I think they've been disrespectful with a few things before the game, thinking they were already through. I'm glad we beat them. They're doing well in their league. We're doing well in ours, but I wasn't happy with a few of their players. Wasn't happy with the way they've been as a club before the game, eyeing up Spurs. They've not even beat us, end quote. Parkinson countered, who accused Sharp causing a scene in the tunnel after the match had concluded. I was a bit disappointed with Billy with some of the things he was shouting down the tunnel. He's a fantastic player, but I thought he was disrespectful after the game. The way their players celebrated was a mark of how tough we made it for them. My message to Billy is you're better than that. My players are humble people, and they're a credit to the football club. Paul Heckingbottom, the head coach at Sheffield United, tried to play the whole thing down. He did admit there's a way to win and a way to lose. That's it. I'm not interested in it. A lot of things you can come with Wrexham, and part of that is all the attention off the pitch, so how you behave then gets magnified, end quote. So Spurs and Sheffield United in the next round. So you've got that one working its way through. And that's going to be a fun one. Sam, if Chelsea doesn't make Champions League, Potter's out. That's 10 points, Sam. 10 points. 10 points they got to make up. Once again, it's a Wall Pass Wednesday. Anything on your mind? Anything on your mind this morning? It's good to go. We're here to talk about it. We're going to be here for a while. Once again, Atlanta United and Cruz Azul behind closed doors, 11 o'clock. So we'll follow along on social media. What's on your mind this morning when it comes to Atlanta United? Even though we can't see it, what's on your mind? Will on Wrexham may come off as cynical. While an underdog story and feel good, I will root for them to see success. Remember, they spend more than anyone in the conference national. Yes, but bigger picture. They're great for grassroots and great for the little guy to get attention. Can't hate that. I have been a fan of their run and what you have, and you've seen it in larger divisions too. You have owners who see an opportunity in a distressed asset. Literally, that's how I'm looking at it. Wrexham was a distressed asset. If you watched the first go-round in the round of 32 with Sheffield United, you saw lighting needs some work. There's some dark spots. You saw that the one end, as you're watching the stadium at Wrexham, the one cop end to the right, far camera right, had two dudes in hard hats and a front loader. That cop end had been condemned, and they finally got the chance to tear it down. What you saw was owners looking at a distressed asset. Happens in any business. Any business. Just so happens we're talking about soccer. Any business has a distressed asset. Any businessman who sits there and sees a distressed asset and wants to make something of that distressed asset needs to invest. It just so happens in this case, the investors come from Hollywood and have all the trappings of it. I think it was, $1.5 million Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney spent to purchase Wrexham in the National League, knowing full well that there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be addressed. I mean, dressing rooms, weight rooms, just the simple things that you would associate with the success of a franchise. Lay it itself out there. Rob McElhenney, Ryan Reynolds, see a distressed asset. You pick up that distressed asset, you invest in it, and you hope to improve its value over time. And Ryan Reynolds said when he was interviewed, he hopes in 10 years to see Wrexham in the Premier League. That's a lot of investment. You're probably adding at least a zero to what you've invested so far. And right now, in the standings, they're on top. But once again, it's that level of investment that we talk about, and that's why it is the way that it is. They have invested. You look at how things have been, and in the National League, it's them and Notts County, and then there's a bit of a gulf. Since my first source is dying on me here, I'll show you where the National League table is. And our first question to the table. So Wrexham, 2 matches in hand right now, 3 points behind Notts County. They're in part of that deal, but then there's a 12-point gulf to third place. So that's what we're looking at. Joining us, and once again, I'm going to test the limits of my I'm testing the limits of my production skills. It's a Wednesday, 10 o'clock, which means when high school basketball is not in the way, we get to catch up with this guy. Beat 2, 3, 4. Welcome back, Dylan Butler, MSG Varsity.
What's up, bud?
It's been a while. Where are you in your high school basketballness right now? Are you you still in your region play? Are you in playoffs? Where are you right now?
No, still regular season, getting towards the end. Usually March is the playoff month. So late regular season, and then they go into basically kind of like in the Catholic League in New York City, they do easiest way to me to describe it is like conference tournaments
Uh-huh.
to set up the seeding then for the intersectional playoffs. So
Okay. So how has it gone so far for you?
busy. I mean, like it's I just finished a stretch of, and actually we threw in a couple of hockey games in there as well.
There you go.
Of 5 games in 7 days.
Man,
Yeah.
good work.
I went Sunday basketball, Monday hockey, Tuesday basketball, Friday hockey, Sunday basketball.
Man, nice work.
Thanks.
And to start hour number 2, Jarrett Smith joining us as well to bring the conversation to Dylan. We were ending hour number 1, Dylan, with the conversation about Wrexham.
Yeah.
And where folks stand. I know that at some points it can be a bit of a divining rod or a lightning rod when it comes to things. Where do you stand on Dad? The Dad mug is out this week. Well done. Where do you stand on Wrexham as an asset to soccer? What are your thoughts on this whole Wrexham thing that we have with Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds?
Love it. I mean, I was a fan of the show. I'm a fan of anything to advance the sport, and to have more narratives here in the States, right? So watched all the episodes, loved it. Going to a side tangent here with Wrexham. I wonder, like, so when I think when everybody watched the series, at least if you were watching it like as it was airing, right? Like, and not catching the replays now.
Right.
We didn't know how. I mean, at least I didn't know how they did, right? Like, I wasn't following during, I guess, the taping because I didn't know that there was this Wrexham show. So everything was new then, and I wonder what that will do maybe to people viewing the show coming up, right? Like, because now everyone's watching and figuring out they know they're top of the league or right near the top of the league. They know this FA Cup run, right? Like, I wonder if all the kind of spoilers, if you will, like if it'll affect the drama, if you will, of the of the show, or because you're going to go in depth and inside the locker room and all that, like, will it just add to it, I guess?
Yeah, and I mean that's for me. Being the lower league degenerate that I am, I enjoy the idea of having something like that on the lower division. But like I was saying when you came on the air, any owner that views a sports property will pounce on a distressed asset and hopefully invest, make it better, and make it improve. Ryan Reynolds said 10 years he wants to be in the Premier League, so he sees this distressed asset much like any other business. They want to improve on it, they want to build on it, and they want to make it this monolith that can be there to help this community. I'm all for it. I like the show, but I like the idea of what they're doing as well. And the fact that Ryan Reynolds is now apparently this emotional mess now that he's been exposed to the FA Cup, all the better.
Yeah, and I don't get the Twitter debate and how MLS then comes into it. Like, it's to borrow a cliche, it's apples and oranges. You can like Wrexham and still like MLS, and it's not. There doesn't have to be a conflict there, right? It doesn't have to be a question of where Wrexham is versus MLS teams and why MLS can't get that. So there's no good stories in them. I mean, it's hogwash, right? Like, we know there is. There just doesn't happen to be a Hollywood superstar or two multimillionaires looking to tell that story, right? And maybe that should change. Maybe it will change with Apple TV, right? But I mean, even going back, and I think it's still on ESPN Plus. So maybe it's not now because MLS is off there. But the LAFC, the first season, that was awesome, right? Like, that was I love any of those inside the team looks, and I just saw a thing on Twitter. Apparently, my club, Newcastle, are doing a 4-part thing for I think on Amazon.
They're doing the All or Nothing series.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Sunderland Till I Die. What a great comedy that is. That is so funny.
Yep, absolutely.
Again, I'm saying it as a Newcastle fan, right? Like I all the heartbreak. It's so funny.
Yeah. Jared Smith for Dylan Butler on a wall pass Wednesday.
Oh no, I'm just enjoying the pettiness here. That makes my day. That is my cup of coffee to start the day. Pettiness toward your rival is healthy for the heart, just like a cup of coffee. Or
Jared, all of the Yeah, no, I was gonna say, Jared, it's great because it starts with, like, we're a big club and we're gonna do so well and we're gonna move on up, and then they don't, they go down.
And then they don't, which is the best. Like, brevity is the soul of wit ending possible. They're gonna move up, and they don't. The end. Roll the credits. So to your point about the productions of things like LAFC, locally, tied to Atlanta United, the Atlanta Falcons just opened Ticketmaster Studios, which is this really nice internal studio that the Falcons have, where they're running their own broadcast, they're running their own podcasts, little shows. They're really stepping up their internal production, and we talked about this last week. That I really hope that it comes to the United side, but that it comes to other teams in MLS, where, especially with Apple TV, they see the opportunity and take the opportunity to produce more expansive and really adventurous content, like we saw with the LAFC feature that you're talking about, which was really good. And I hope we do see more of that, even if it's just the teams running it themselves. That's fine, but give us that content to absorb to kind of build that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, look, some of my favorite things, even switching sports, it's the Hard Knocks, right, on HBO. It's the I don't think they do it anymore, but like it used to be the lead up to the Winter Classic, right?
Yes.
And then they expanded that to the playoffs, right, where the inside look, the mic'd up players, like, into my veins with that. I love it. Like, it's got more, please. So if the hope, 100%, is, now there is a media partner who wants to, who's dying for more content, right, and has the financial capability to bring that to you. So I agree. I would love to see a lot more of that on MLS, and then we will see those stories, right? Like, I mean, we know. We're on the inside of with some of these teams. We know that there's great stories to be told, right? And the drama, that is week, in and week out, in a very competitive league. So would love to see more of that for sure.
Happy day 8 of MLS season pass for those of you who celebrate so far. And really, and apparently the club content is about as wide ranging as it gets. Some clubs have gone all in, and you're seeing a lot of content from them so far. Some, when it comes to the individual stuff, folks are kind of lagging behind. And since we're talking lagging behind, I want to talk about one of the teams that is there in your footprint, but is not on your side of the river. I want to talk about the team on the other side of the river.
Okay.
That plays over there. If I'm not mistaken, they're unveiling a $70 million training facility in that particular state on the other side of the river.
Correct. Yes.
And you wonder, and this is, I mean, I don't know if I'm the only person, that I know that Jared is, but the only group of folks that want Red Bulls to embrace their New Jerseyness. Yet they continue to not do that to this day. And I think it would help them, fill in the occasional seat if they went ahead and embraced their New Jerseyness instead of sitting there and trying to say, New York, New Jersey Red Bulls, still trying to hang on to that kind of stuff. What is up with Red Bulls these days?
Well, I mean, with that point, it's funny. I remember when Red Bull purchased it, and that was part of the conversation. And it was pretty, they were straight on honest about it. They said there's more marketing power with the New York name than there is with the New Jersey name. So obviously the same with the New York Giants, New York Jets, right? They both are in the same boat, and where they have their stadium, their whole operations are in New Jersey, and they're still those New York teams. Now they were obviously at one point on this side of the Hudson River.
Right.
The Red Bulls never were, even when they were the Metro Stars. They've always been a Jersey team. I guess the Devils are the only ones who are just straight in. We're New Jersey, Jersey proud. So, but you know what? I got to give these guys some credit here, because I've every time that we talk about them in the preseason, it was last year, it was this year, and I've said, no news, right? Crickets, nothing.
Yeah.
And they've done some business, man. They've done some work. They get a club record signing, a DP, right? Like, these are things. Those two words, the Red Bull fans are like, what? Huh? What are those things?
Who are these Red Bulls that you speak of? Sir?
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's funny, because I never would have thought at this point of the preseason that they've had a more, I don't know, complete or busy, or I should say a busier preseason than this team on this side of the river, right? Where there's been so many outward moves for NYCFC and very little coming in. So good on the Red Bulls getting some of their business done. Obviously it remains to be seen sort of how these pieces fit. Probably still need to do a little bit more work on the defensive side of things, right? Like, you need to, I don't know, you don't need a like for like necessarily for Aaron Long, but you do need help on that in that position. But yeah, like, they're getting some work done, which hasn't happened in the last few preseasons, and spending money to do so.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Jarrett, what else is on your mind with Dylan this morning?
So, because you're up in the area, I feel like I can ask you this. With the abrupt departure, and admittedly from my perspective, I think our perspective, mine and John's, the confusing departure of Jesse Marsch. It looks like Chris Armas might be the interim going into this game. Which, if Chris Armas beats Manchester United, Ralph Ragnick might gain 20 years of life just from that experience. Just through some form of osmosis. But he continues to get a lot of criticism from people, and it's from like this side of the Atlantic and the other side. And like, I wanted to get your take on Armas, because I don't think I ever heard a crossword about him. People seem to genuinely like him as a guy, and he's been on two staffs with Ragnick and now with Marsch, of guys who are really disciples of that style. And it seems like he's. I guess I don't get where all the vitriol comes from with him. Yeah, I mean, well, to start, on the other side of the Atlantic, it's because he's American, right? Like, that's always going to be the case.
Absolutely.
So that part you understand. On this side of things, yeah, like, I've always I've butted heads with Red Bulls fans about this for years, and I didn't think he follows up Jesse Marsch. He actually completes a Supporter Shield season, right? Because Jesse left, I think, in July of that season. And then Chris follows up. I think part of the problem is he made and we've talked about it. I've talked about it with Jason, a bunch of times as well when I was on the show with him and you guys. Like, he made one tactical move, and it was against Atlanta, right? In that Eastern Conference final, which, like, you get, right? Like, they were all in and pressing, and Tata decided to play long ball out of the back. And, like, so think about it, right? Like, why then are you going to press the center backs if they're just going to play a long ball? And then you got to battle for 50-50 in the midfield. So he stepped away from that and changed a little bit of the tactic And so the move was the right move. The players didn't execute that move, but he was seen to be the villain because he changed the tactics in the biggest games, right? So Red Bull lose that, obviously, Atlanta go on, they win MLS Cup. So right there, he was the villain for Red Bulls fans, continued to be so. He goes to Toronto. I don't think he really got a fair shake there, right? I mean, they played the first. I don't think he never played a game at BMO Field. Everything was in Florida with the COVID restrictions. And actually, one criticism I will say about him in this was he was looking to have Toronto play in that same style. And that was an older Toronto team. They had kind of set in their ways and how they play. And it just wasn't that wasn't a good marriage. Right. So, what I will say too is he is incredibly detail oriented. He's a great guy, super nice guy. That's what, Jared was saying too. Like, you don't really hear the people who deal with him a lot. Not only are they not criticizing him, they're singing his praises. I don't know where the opportunity has to be for him to get a long run out and prove himself. And who knows, right? Maybe at the end of the day, he's not meant to be a manager. Maybe he's just a great assistant coach. There's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, I mean, that's the kind of talk there about Armas, but I think a lot of the criticism, unfortunately for him, has been unfair.
1-8-2 in his time in Toronto, and it was 12 minus 7, 5 months and 3 days on the job. It was a 7-1 loss to DC United on July 4th. So 1-8-2 for Chris Armas. And yeah, we got into the discussion about ones and twos. You could have guys who are some of the best twos on the planet. Defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, line coach, whatever. But the second that they get the head coaching job, it is just not them. And we see it all the time. And there's nothing wrong with being one of the best number twos around, regardless of what sport we're talking about here.
Yeah. And generally too, like a lot of times you're the good cop, right? It's the bad cop. So you're the guy that, if the head coach is crushing a guy, right, you're the guy who puts your arm around them and you walk him back to the facility and you talk him down from the ledge. Like the number two is generally the good cop in that. And then it's hard then to go from good cop. Now you got to be the bad cop, right? Or you remain the good cop and you want to be this player manager, but if it doesn't work out, then when you got to be hard, it comes across as not authentic. So it's not the easiest move to go from assistant to head coach.
No. And when it comes to the life of the American manager in the Premier League, I'll just go ahead and say the Premier League right now. American soccer fans are never going to hear the end of it, are they?
No, I don't. I don't know who would. I thought it would be Jesse because of the other steps that he took, right? Like with Salzburg and Leipzig and doing well in the Champions League. And I thought all that other experience would lead to a longer employment in the EPL. But now you go from Bradley to Jesse. Like I don't even know if you're another, I don't know, if you're like a Jim Curtin, do you even want to try to, I mean, I guess you want to challenge yourself. You're always looking for challenges, but the cards are so stacked against you. I guess unless you're Ted Lasso, it's impossible.
Jared, go for it.
Yeah, and that's it's hard to bring that to reality from what we want to see happen, where we see the American coach win over the British press it just hasn't seemed to happen. So it was confusing for us with Jesse because you give him the window, and then you pull the plug on it right after the window. Like whoever you bring in, like you're just going to try and rescue this, but they're not going to get a window to try and fix this. It just seemed so weird.
And they brought in the players like that he wanted, that Jesse wanted, that fit
Yeah.
his style, right? So yeah, that's crazy.
It was so weird. And I guess to shift it, I guess, to his future. I mean, we were talking about this, after it happened. I don't know what the spot would be, but it feels like Jesse could land back in the States at some point and continue coaching here if he want. I don't know if he would want to stay and try his hand in Europe more, or if he'd want to come back here. I know people are already clamoring for him to be part of that national team discussion. I mean, it feels like there's he's going to have opportunity somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've always said, I feel like this has been I've been touting him as, I mean, I'm not alone, but I've been touting him as like the next national team manager. I think it was early on in qualifiers, right? Like, weren't we talking about, if Berhalter doesn't beat El Salvador or whatever it is, like, and I've always thought he would be the next guy. And at the time too, there was like, do you want to leave Leeds and the EPL? And, now he doesn't have that concern, obviously. So I think he'd be a good choice. I think he'd be the best choice for the U.S. men's national team, especially considering obviously the ties that he already has with, some of the key players for that team. And I think there's enough of a run up too to the World Cup that, say it doesn't work in 2 years, right? Like, and I don't know what, I don't know, you don't win the Gold Cup or whatever it might be. If it doesn't work in 2 years, you would still at least have a 2-year run up to the World Cup for another manager, right? Like, it's not ideal, but I think he can just maybe rest right now, and hopefully, the U.S. Soccer gets their stuff together and gets a sporting director, and maybe he's got a few months off, and in the summer he's hired, right? Like, I think again he'd be an ideal choice. And interesting too that we've heard some murmurings that not that he's putting his hat in the ring, but he's just so honest that Jim Curtin was even saying, right, like, about being an assistant coach for that. And how about that tandem, right? Like Marsh and Curtin, that'd be phenomenal.
Yeah, we played that sound in hour number 1 from the Crack podcast with Gooch and DMB. And yeah, with Jim Curtin, what you get from him is it's unfiltered, and it's just like, okay, I'm going to open the door and I'm going to say what I'm going to say. And then I thought it was interesting that Curtin said, yeah, even if I'm an assistant, I would be interested in being there for my country. It's rare where you have a guy come out of the blocks and sit there and say, yeah, I mean, I'll even take an assistant's gig with the national team and leave my current gig. That's something rare. I don't think I've ever heard a coach say, yeah, I'll take an assistant's gig for a national side.
You're right. I mean, Lucci was, but not by choice. He was already out of Dallas when he got the assistant coaching job at the national team. So you're right. But I think it speaks to how important this next World Cup is and this cycle is, right? So to not just do well, but just for the growth of the sport in the States, right? So and I think Curtin is smart too, right? I mean, if again you need to make a move, if you move him over a seat, I think a lot of people would be comfortable with that too.
Last question, Jarrett, for Dylan this morning.
Yeah, and I guess kind of to shift it back to MLS, because right now we're getting deep into preseason, and really getting close to regular season. I know it's been a lot of talk about LAFC making their moves. Philadelphia looks like they've reloaded, and it kind of feels like Philadelphia set themselves on a revenge tour. Is there any club that's kind of you think might be off people's radar they should keep a really close eye on this year if they want to appear really smart when discussing this with other people?
I'm still intrigued by the Galaxy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Especially because they need to obviously make the moves now, right? So, what they do with those winger positions with the DP, but I think that's a team that could make some noise as well. I think Portland is setting themselves up to be a really strong team this year. Not that they're sort of like they're probably not an off the radar team because I think they're always in the mix. I'm intrigued by Toronto. They get one of the biggest free agents of signings available, right? And Sean Johnson.
Yeah.
They get Matt Hedges. They still do need more help, obviously in the back, but
yes,
a full year with the Italians as well. I think that they're a team too that could make some noise. And then with the coaching change, I thought the Crew the last couple of years have woefully underperformed. So now with Wilfred Nancy there, does that change things, right? Like they're another team I think I'm eyeballing, and it's not because I'm on with you guys, but Atlanta I think is another team too that's super intriguing. Obviously, the search for the number 9 is still there. Just throwing this out there, you wonder a little bit. I don't think that they would agree to terms, at least in the term part of it. But I almost wonder if like a Kai Kamara, who said he wants to be traded out of Montreal.
But he's 100% with them right now.
If yes, if kicking the tires there might not get something at least in the as a stopgap perhaps. But again, I think he's looking for term. I don't see how you would sign a 38-year-old striker to 4 years.
Yeah.
So even though he's been so productive, I think a 2-year deal is probably the best you're going to get if you're Kai Kamara. But yeah, no, I think Atlanta as well is another team to always interesting in Atlanta.
No doubt about it. And we'll keep talking about things as we get closer to the beginning of the regular season. What's going on with you right now with MLSsoccer.com, OSDB, and MSG Varsity?
No, that's old school. That's MSG Varsity is my old stomping grounds. Varsity Media.
Varsity Media, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So OSDB, we just came out with what did I put out this week?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. What did you put out?
I know. It's all the preseason content is flying around my head. I did storylines, intriguing storylines. Will an MLS team win CCL again? Will this year? Will LAFC repeat? Who will be the next big outbound transfer? Things like that. So that'll be that's on OSDB now, and we're going to start the conference previews coming up the next 2 Mondays leading up to the start of the season. Varsity Media, I've got basketball on Friday and Sunday. Cardinal Hayes, St. Raymond's on Friday night. Cardinal Hayes, St. Francis Prep on Sunday. Cardinal Hayes, by the way, has Ian Jackson, who just committed to North Carolina, and Elijah Moore, who just committed to Syracuse. So a couple of big-time players there for Hayes. So if you're a fan of either of those two teams, you can go to Varsity Media's YouTube page to check out those games.
All right. Will is asking, who's the big New Jersey basketball power now that the school that Hurley's dad coached does not exist anymore?
St. Anthony's was that school. And I think right now it's Roselle Catholic, I think, is the top team in Jersey.
Okay, so Roselle Catholic. We'll keep an eye on that. Dylan, thanks again for hanging out with us, and we'll catch back up with you again next Wall Pass Wednesday at 10. We'll go over conference previews, news of the day, anything else that comes to mind. Thanks for hanging out, my friend.
All right, boys.
Thanks.
Dylan Butler with his dad mug. He's hanging out with us. Jarrett, we have a starting 11 out for the match with Atlanta.
I'm looking at it.
And if from the back, it is Brad Gazan, Miles Robinson, Air Force Juan, Brooks Lennon, Andrew Gutman, midfield of Ibarra and Hosechu. Caleb Wiley is involved. Aruju, Almada, Machop Chol up top. What do you think?
I guess 4-3-3. Wiley on the left, Luis on the right, Joel up top again. And so this is an interesting one because I know Jason asked Gonzalo Pineda about it last media availability, which I guess was Monday afternoon.
Right.
So it's this discussion about Machop Chol as a striker.
Right.
I'm very intrigued by it because I never really imagined him as a striker. He's got a lot of Machop Chol has a really unique kind of physical existence because he is such a horse of a human being. He's just really big. Like, he's just tall as all hell.
Mm-hmm.
I could see him being an absolute problem, but again, like, you got to produce.
Yeah.
He's going to have to produce if he gets these opportunities. Can he do that? I honestly don't know. I think it'd be really cool if he did.
Yeah.
I am intrigued at the entire concept of it. We'll see if we'll see how it actually looks when they do it. But yeah, I'm intrigued by the concept of Machop Chol, giant striker who is really good with the ball at his feet. Really good defensively, and that length does add to something defensively because it's just a lot of human being you're trying to dribble past. We'll see how it works in the long term. Otherwise, it's about what I expected. I don't think we've seen anything on Yakimakis Watch. That, by the way, we are fully into like watch territory for that. Just in case y'all had any questions,
it is Minotaur Watch, absolutely.
Yeah, because like we don't seem to be getting any other. It's been quiet on that front. Last we heard, he was heading to Mexico for his medical. Not sure where all that sits, so we'll have to see. But I'm intrigued by Machop Chol at striker just because he's such a physical specimen to deal with. Now, does that pay off? Who knows? It might not at all. But I mean, that's part of what preseason is for, Like, part of preseason is we're trying to figure out who's going to be able to do what for us. Who can, can we mix things up? Can we change guys around? That's kind of what you want to see from preseason. We'll see.
And joining us from the road. Parts unknown. I feel like since Bart is only joining us on the video side with an avatar, it's almost like Mr. Wrestling with a mask. From parts unknown, it is at Soccer for US PODs at Bartimus Prime 19. Bart Keeler hopping in this morning. Good morning, Bart.
Good morning. I'm about 10 miles away from Al Lang Stadium. I'm in Tampa this week, spreading the gospel about sustainably made cables. Well, they sent me here. They paid for it, so I might as well go.
Oh, I'm just thinking Tampa. So
yeah, I didn't choose that site, but I'll take the free trip.
Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And Bart, we are kind of looking at anything and everything going on in the world. I don't know how long you can duck out this morning, but the match.
Well, I'm curious. What is our, like, on a scale of 1 to atomic Zaxby sauce? What's our level of concern over the preseason results? Because I'm at like I think they call it limpy, where I just don't care about preseason results with anything.
My nose is turned up, and I am at the most mild sauce humanly possible. I am nowhere close. I am nowhere close to atomic Zaxby sauce on a preseason. Bart, Jarrett, what about you?
I am undetermined. you don't love the final score of watching your reserves get bounced 3-0, but without seeing it and without seeing how it happened and seeing what mistakes were made. And
Wait, Jarrett, you couldn't watch the match? What was wrong? What was wrong with being able to watch the match?
Well, you see, you know what? Part of it's my fault. I sent them an iPhone 3G. I went back in time, got an iPhone 3G from about like 2010, and sent it over. And man, it just did not work. That's on me. That's my fault. But my backup plan was to send them an old HTC Thunderbolt, which was the first ever 4G phone, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
Fun fact, it came with an extended battery pack that you could buy separately because the 4G sucked the battery life out of it so quickly. I know this because I had one. But, yeah, I unfortunately wasn't able to watch because the iPhone 3G I sent down there failed. And that was after it was we had a discussion about the philosophies of landscape versus portrait mode. But that all that being said, like without seeing how the mistakes were made or how the plays were made, yeah, I'm kind of like, yeah, you don't love to see the results, but I want to see more of how they're happening. You know what I mean?
Right, absolutely, and that's where I'm at because even with the first game against Chattanooga, I think people overreacted to the fact that this was the first time that we had played together for a very long time. We had several guys coming off of injuries. Be patient. I'm not hitting the panic button yet either. Now that said, if they don't look good against, in the AmFam Cup against Pachuca or Toluca or what are those? Who are we playing? I don't know. I turned down my tickets for that game. Then I'll be concerned because we got to start looking like we can actually compete. And as I've said for a while now, this team has to prove that it's a good team because it hasn't done that as of late, and they're continuing to not prove they're a good team. That said, I'm willing to get the preseason to get that together.
For the record, AmFam 2 Electric Boogaloo is against Toluca.
That one.
A week from tonight at Mercedes.
Pachuca is where Chicho went to.
Yes,
that's right.
Chicho Arango for $5 million.
And LAFC is somehow replacing him with Aubameyang.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Salary cap is a theoretical concept.
That's absolutely correct.
Yes. So we've got that to look at as well here. Sam Williamson is at Buffalo garlic level concern. Will is at milk level of concern. Ricky Ricardo.
Garlic's a good sauce.
Ricky Ricardo is at Zaxby's barbecue level concern. Very smoky barbecue sauce, but still barbecue. And Uncle is worried about the defense's readiness and the midfield attack should be fine with Yakamakis coming in. So that's the variety of concerns so far. Yeah. When it comes,
I understand the defensive side of it because you are getting Miles back. You want to see how he is coming off of that injury. It looks like he'll be ready to go. In the back of my head, I'm wondering does Brad make the play he made against Chattanooga in a regular season game where he tries to knock the ball down and it bounces off him for an easy tap in, or do you just let it go out? Even the goal you give up against Atlante. I'm sorry, I keep giving them an extra A. Atlante.
Yes.
Yeah, the goal he gives up there, it looks like they might have been offside, but that beside the point. Defense didn't crash the way you wanted them to, and it's hard to tell from that angle.
Yep.
But the shot may have taken a weird swerve or it may have had a knuckle to it. But I'm very intrigued to see how they clean up these defensive miscues.
Yeah. Well, and I think I'm with you, Jarrett, that of all the people I'm going to give the most patience with is Brad Guzan because he does. I feel like that position. You need to be quick with your reflexes, and those aren't quite back yet. I also think that it's fair to say that he is at the final stage of his career journey. But I also agree with you. I feel like a lot of the goals that people are ragging Goose for, I'm wondering where the defense was on these goals because some of the defenders were just watching him, like you watch a duck on a pond in a park. It was just oh, that's interesting. Oh, I should maybe do something, and then it was too late.
Yeah. And you look at all of these things, and like I said, I'm at nose turned up, shaking my head level of concern. I just want to see, like everybody's saying, I want folks to be healthy. I don't want what we had with George Campbell and Machop Chol last year, where they were injured in Mexico in training camp, and then their returns did not help them become integrated from the beginning, and they had to kind of catch up from the ground running when they got healthy. And for me, that's where I am. It's like, look, figure out your relationships. Figure out when someone wants the ball, where do they want it? I know that there are new faces and things like that. Everybody's coming in healthy. Fantastic. Develop your symbiotic relationships and your feel for those around you. That's what I want here in the preseason. So when you get to the 25th and the game against Jarrett San Jose Earthquakes, you know where that player or those players around you in those triangles are going to go. You know what you can do comfortably. You know that you can hit that cross and know that that player is going to be there. Those kinds of things. Work on that right now. Get out of there healthy. That's just me.
Yeah, and that you're exactly right. I think is that you want health after this preseason because last season was bad, and Jarrett, I know as much as I do that for a goalkeeper coming back off of something like this, it's just hard, and you need the people in front of him to continue to grow as well, and that includes Miles, includes his new partner, and that includes even to an extent. Ozzy Alonso coming back, Ibarra figuring out what position he actually plays. These are things that, guys have to figure out on their own. And hopefully they get it through this preseason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I was kind of perplexed by this whole thing where, like, whether or not how people felt about, like, Brad he should be able to come back and do that. Like, yeah, your Achilles is pretty damn vital as a goalkeeper. It's when you're going from prepped tense to, pushing off and, you're using those quick twitch muscles. It's a lot. It can be a lot of strain on that Achilles tendon, and Brad is not a spring chicken at all. That being said, you brought in 2 veteran goalkeepers. Not sure what to expect of them, and I think a lot of us are a little rattled because of you brought in a veteran goalkeeper last year. To be your backup, and Bobby wasn't it. Bobby had hit.
Well, there's a difference between a veteran backup and a guy who's literally at the end of his career. And I don't think either of us were going to be offer at that point.
Well, and Bobby also had to learn how to play with the ball at his feet, something that he wasn't comfortable with, and as he tried to learn. He was having to learn. It was on-the-job training for Bobby to try to integrate into the system and do what the demands are of this particular philosophy. And it was rough at times with Bobby. And so they had to dial back what they wanted to do philosophically to deal with Bobby's skill set. So, I mean, that's the way it was with Bobby.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think people are a little bit spooked on the backup goalkeeper side on that front. You do have 2 really good young goalkeepers, and again, goalkeepers age differently. So it's hard to sit here and say, like, yeah, throw Justin Garces in there. Although I think he's getting to the point in the next. I would like to see him some this year, and then next year I think you want to start getting him more minutes. Vicente Reyes.
I'm ready to throw him in now, but that's just me.
I mean, Vicente Reyes is another one that I'm really high on. Garces is great. Vicente Reyes is still a teenager. And I think you're going to be looking at those guys in the near future, but I get what you can out of Brad Guzan. I will eternally give Brad Guzan credit because of the reports. I think it was last year or the year after that, or the year before that he did the Chipper Jones. He took a bit of a pay cut to free up money.
Mm-hmm.
I will forever give him credit for that because guys don't have to do that. They're well within their right to not change their contract setup at all. And he really has been a leader for this team.
No question. And Bart, when you look at a lot of different things here, especially at keeper, because of the multiple competitions that you're going to be involved in. You need 1A, 1B.
Yeah.
You need, because you're looking probably what? If you max out in all of your competitions this year, you're looking at basically 50 matches among Open Cup, Leagues Cup, and Major League Soccer. And this is maxed out.
Yeah.
50 matches. You're going to need 1A, 1B, or 1, 2, and 3, and bringing in a guy like Quentin Westberg as your 1B/2, having a guy like Clement Diop as your 3, having Reyes and Garces there as a part of the system. You need that kind of depth in a season like this.
Well, and I think the question that we're going to have, because you're going to have to pick one of these auxiliary competitions, which one is the player kids competition, And I haven't decided which one, because personally, I think the Open Cup is a lot more variable and just weird. And I think you could just do a player kids thing. And if you go out early in the Open Cup, then so be it. But the least.
But either one now gets you into CONCACAF Champions League.
Yeah, you're right. So that's my next thing, though, is like, if you look at Leagues Cup, would you rather eliminate the variables in Open Cup and try to go win that, like a trophy that you've already won before? It would be really cool to repeat as a trophy winner. Well, that's false. We were 3-time champions of the Open Cup, but no one wants to admit that.
Yes.
But you look at Leagues Cup, and you're going to get
conversation, bud.
Leagues Cup gives you 2 games that are going to be a little bit more, what they're going to give you. So is that your player kids competition? So they get, and I don't mean like kids, but is that hey, Garces, you're starting these games because we want you to get real action in a relatively low stakes environment. If you bomb out in the group stage of Leagues Cup, I don't think rational people are going to look at that and go, wow, this is terrible, if you're doing the player kids thing. But I'm interested to see which competition that is that we do that, because I do think it offers an opportunity to play even like a Noah Cobb, where these guys seem to be people who you want to include as future stars of this club. How do you get them integrated in a future competition like this?
Yeah, that's, Jarrett, I know a lot of folks are staring at Noah Cobb as the next wave, as a part of the next wave for Atlanta United. I'm excited about what Noah Cobb could possibly bring to the table this year. I'm excited to see him and his growth. And if it's, with the first team most of the time, looking forward to it. A Johnny Fortune, Jackson Conway, you give me these young guys, Reyes and Garces, et cetera, and see how they can integrate this season. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I want to see how much time they get on the field, what they're able to give you consistently. It's going to be it's going to be interesting to see, and this goes into an entirely different conversation, by the way, that I'm happy to have with people. And that entirely different conversation is how we deal with homegrown kids, because how are we going to have this conversation of, homegrown kid is, you give him time on the field. If they don't hit the ground running if they hit the ground running, they're making mistakes. That's okay, because they're teenagers. You're bringing kids up to be homegrowns. You're not expecting them, at least I don't think you should be expecting them to be, life-changingly good from the jump. They're going to make mistakes, because a lot of them are not even old enough to, go buy a beer down at the store.
So you don't want, so a Johnny Fortune and Ronaldinho, are not the same thing.
No, and it's completely asinine that we do. Like, we did that. Well, here's the thing, man. We did this last year with George Campbell.
Yeah.
And look, I'm not saying that players are exempt from criticism. Of course you can hold them and say, hey, this is somewhere you need to get better, kid. Like, yes, have that conversation, but also have it in a way that's realistic. That, this kid made some mistakes in this game. Oh, in this game he did really well. Great. That's where we should be having this conversation of, he had a good game, he had a bad game. Okay, we'll start building on more good, less bad. That's what I want to see as a fan.
Bart, what about you and the youngins this year? Who are you looking at? Who are you most looking forward to seeing?
Well, I think you've got two guys who have an opportunity to really take a step up, and one of them is Jackson Conway, because despite what John Georgios, we don't quite know what the situation. Georgios, Gianlucas, I'll get that eventually. Despite what we think he might be doing, we're still going to need a striker probably on February 25. This is what I'm guessing.
Come on,
yeah. Listen, I'm not opposed to that. But Jackson or Machop Chol have to take a step forward, because they're at that point in their career where you got to prove your MLS quality, because they haven't quite proven that they've had moments.
Right.
But have they proven it consistently? I mean, Jackson Conway scoring a header in Nashville to get a draw in our worst season ever was a highlight of my Atlanta United fandom. But he's got to do more than that, and those are the two I'm looking at, is not because I'm excited necessarily, but more of a, hey, what are you going to show us this year to prove that you should stay here longer than 2023?
Yeah. And Unc, to your point, the difference is when the mistakes have a direct effect on results. That happens. It's part of growth.
Yeah, that's why we got rid of Alan Franco.
And that's the thing, is like, I think you're more forgiving of it when it happens, like with a George Campbell than with an Alan Franco, because Alan Franco, you're expecting to come in here and be a leader. George Campbell, yeah, he's going to make mistakes. You know who really dealt with this a lot was in 2018 Philadelphia. 2018 Philadelphia played a couple of young center backs, including Austin Trusty, and they made some really bad mistakes in that season. By the time they got to the playoffs, and they were able to make the playoffs, by the time they got there, those kids had cleaned up a lot, and they were better. But yeah, like I said, we shouldn't exempt kids from criticism, and we should expect them to be able to do, certain things well and to take steps forward. But man, yeah, for me, there's a lot last year where I felt like we're holding homegrown kids who are in there because of depth issues to DP standards sometimes, and
to your point there. To your point, though, what do we see from Caleb Wiley, Tyler Wolf this year that shows that they learned from that experience? Because they were good for a good part of the year. Caleb Wiley was a perfectly acceptable substitute left back or left winger. So how does he take that step forward? And I'm really excited to see that, but I'm more excited for that as a theoretical concept than the fully applicable, concrete, can Jackson and Machop cut it in MLS?
Yes. Bart, how much longer do you get to hide?
6 minutes.
Okay. All right. So we'll go to the top of the hour with Bart, and then we'll wrap it up by 11:05, because the match will have started at Estadio Azteca with Atlanta United and Cruz Azul. Are you dropping back down to Florida, Bart, quickly for She Believes Cup?
I will go to Florida, but I will be driving up to Nashville. So that game is Sunday. We're doing an up and back the same day. Luckily, the afternoon kickoff affords us that opportunity. So I will be at She Believes Cup in Nashville. We will have an AO Atlanta representative or two at the game here in Orlando. And then I think we might have a couple in Dallas. We have a couple of people who moved out to Dallas in the past year, and they'll probably be at that game.
Okay. So everybody knows, everything's on Peacock and Universo. 2 games back-to-back, Thursday in Orlando, Japan, Brazil, USA, Canada. That's on the 16th. The 19th that Bart's talking about, 3:30, 6:30 at Geodis, USA, Japan, Brazil, and Canada. Frisco, Texas on the 22nd, Canada, Japan at 4, USA, Brazil at 7. So the thing that I wanted to get into with you, since this is your first visit since this came out, Mark Geiger was asked by Mike Voitala at Soccer America, advice for ambitious young refs. And as our resident ref, I wanted to get your feedback on Mark Geiger's advice, who, may want to see themselves working in the pros or even in a World Cup. He has 6 points. We have 4 minutes. So, we can play it almost as cliffhangery if you want. First and foremost, he says you got to do games. Long journey with every single match, you're developing that skill set. That seems like a giant duh.
Yeah.
Number 2.
Take the games. That's good. That's good advice.
Go outside your comfort zone. Challenge yourself on the next level of the game. It's not going to be perfect. Doesn't have to be perfect because that's where you really learn where your deficiencies are. You can go back to your comfort zone and work on that skill set as you continue to challenge yourself in those more difficult matches. The difficult matches that become that next comfort zone, and you continue to move up in that way. Knowing what's a foul, what's not a foul is obviously important, but you must know how to manage players, manage the game, and navigate through difficult situations.
That sounds great.
Okay. Number 3, coping with mistakes. You have to own it. If you want to become a better referee, you have to be honest with yourself and with mistakes that you make. You can't think or portray that you're perfect all the time.
Yeah.
Admit when you make a mistake. Number 4, abusive coaches and parents. We have to ignore it sometimes, but use the tools at your disposal to deal with the coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Number 5.
That's a big one for all youth soccer. For anyone who's in youth soccer, please help us all put a stop to that.
Number 5, watch the game. Kevin Stott was always the person I looked up to. He was the model referee that I wanted to be. Many of the things I did on the field at the youth or amateur level at that time were things I saw Kevin Stott doing. Then what I did is modify that to fit my own personality, fit what I needed to do in a game to manage a situation. Find somebody who seems to have the same type of personality as you. Look to see what they're doing and how they're managing situations and adopt that to be part of your game. You like 5?
Yeah, actually, I would advise, my addendum to that would be, there are a lot of professional referees you could look at. I like Ismail Elfaf personally, but there's always referees that you work with who do it in a way that you can take pieces from. And the other thing is everyone's style is different. So to his point, look at someone who you think is really good, see what they do well. Look at someone who you think is not very great, look at what they still do well. There are still things that they might do well. But that's a good point. And find someone that you can look up to. But for young referees at the grassroots level, there are going to be referees in your club that you work with that you can look up to.
6, and his last one. Mentorship is huge. You're not going to be able to move up through the ranks from the youth through amateurs up to professional without having a mentor, having somebody you trust who's going to be honest, who's been there and done that through a referee's journeys. They're going to outgrow some mentors. They're going to be people who can just bring you so far, who maybe have not experienced the level of soccer you're going to next. Then you have to find a new mentor, someone who's been there who can tell you about the game and how to prepare and how to navigate through matches or certain situations. Those are his 6 thoughts about.
I think that's better than we've heard from Howard Webb. So I'm already liking this. I think he has a lot of. I think he has a lot of.
Howard Webb was.
Yeah, he's actually trying to help people.
God forbid.
And I'll summarize, I think, all of them by just saying that, like, the whole point is you're constantly learning as a referee. So to his point about, admit when you make a mistake, it's hard to admit that on the field, and it's certainly not something you need to do a whole lot of during the game. But, there are little things that you can admit that you messed up on that help the players understand that, hey, I'm in this too. For example, one that I always come back to is I may have given an advantage or not given an advantage. And the players will react one way or another. And afterwards, I'll be like, hey, that was my bad. I probably should have given that advantage there, but I thought it was a bad foul and needed to call it or something, and admit that you may not have played the game that they wanted to play sometimes. That's great advice. I think, again, mentorship and looking up and role models are very good because you need to find someone who you trust. And this is true in every profession, but especially in refereeing where you have a lot of people who give you a lot of feedback that's not coming from a good place. So having a referee mentor that you can look up to that is going to try to give you honest feedback, but constructive feedback is very important.
All right, added time really quickly. David says, biggest issue he sees with youth refs, they need to talk to kids. Explain why they stopped the game, talk through excessive grabbing and pushing, talk to the kids playing. Item 2, be in charge. If you blow the whistle and kids keep playing, you have to stop the game. Number of times I've seen a ref hold for a quick throw in takes place, and the ref just lets them play. So be in charge for David.
And don't be afraid to be in charge is the hard thing there.
Yeah.
Hell, I'd love to see the USL refs do that. That was one of the things. That was one of the things we dealt with last year, John, when we called twos games. Was how often, Demianchuk, I think, was the one who was most infamous for this. Was communicate with the players, even early in the game. Hey, that's a foul in the midfield. That was kind of an ugly foul. Well, communicate with the players. Tell them, hey, careful. And then communicate with the team that was fouled and say, I'm watching it. I'm talking to them. We're working on where we're going to set the line. Communicate with the players so they're not guessing.
Absolutely.
It isn't that hard.
Nope.
No, I think that's one thing that I would say that I would give young referees advice is to find your voice, because everyone communicates differently. I have referees that I work with who say, I don't like to talk to the players at all. And I will just say that I vehemently disagree with that. Yep. But I also understand that not everyone is as extroverted as I am and is not as willing to have those conversations. But you got to find ways that you communicate to the players to let them know exactly like you said, Jarrett. Because sometimes you may not call the foul because, like, again, you might let that advantage go. Or it's like, yeah, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's really not that bad. But, like, hey, watch yourself because you're approaching that line. And those are things that you need to know. And also, like, the game changes. Some games are different. So you have to communicate every game where you're seeing that line being drawn.
All right, Bart, go talk sustainability.
All right, I will go talk about sustainable cabling. I will leave you with this. We have breaking news. Orlando will host the USA El Salvador Nations League match on March 27th. That is the final match of that tournament coming back from Grenada. So Orlando, you're getting another soccer game. Congratulations. You know, I don't know why y'all keep getting this.
Bart, we'll catch up with you next time.
Bye, y'all.
All right, Bart Keeler, he's in Tampa talking stuff. David says, all that being said, had a great crew in the final on Sunday, went to the tournament director after, made sure they knew the crew was excellent. One last thought from Emilio, Jarrett, before we go. He says, Caleb Wiley's the most impressive kid coming through the system so far, more than Bello and Campbell. He's not counting Miles since he was older. What about impressive kids coming through the system for you? And there are a lot of them.
Yeah, he's a good kid. I mean, he's talented. He's smart. He's very savvy. And Noah Cobb is too. And I'm interested to see what Noah Cobb brings to the table in year one, because there are going to be high expectations for him to hit the ground running when he's given those opportunities. Luke Brennan's another one to watch. Who, if you want to, like, let's see, it's almost Valentine's Day, so like we'll put your Valentine's Day candy on the Brax Hearts. I guess if you want to put those on a guy, then Luke Brennan might be your next homegrown. If you want to start laying down candy, Daniel Sabachu is a fascinating one. I'm a big fan of his, but he's also a very big and physical striker who missed time because of injury. And he's going to get an opportunity with Atlanta United too to show that he deserves to be part of that homegrown discussion. Let me think who else we got. Grant Howard went off to college, but Grant Howard took some huge steps last year, and he might be one of those that's and I'm going to preface this when I say that he might be in that Machop like category. Don't take that as he's the exact same player. Don't take it as he's going to take the exact same path. Take it as he might be that guy who goes to school for a couple of years and then comes back and signs a homegrown deal.
Yep.
Like Grant Howard took some really impressive steps playing with the twos last year. He really struggled out of the gate. There were some really rough games. And by the time he got ready to go to school, he was slotting into that back line with Noah Cobb and put in some really good performances. He's one to watch as well. And there's a bunch of kids at school. Like, this is the thing about the academy is they are churning out these kids to go into school, and it's not like you're just sending them anywhere. Like, a bunch of these kids are going to, Clemson, who was coming off a national championship a year and a half ago.
Yep.
Of course, you've got the South Carolina connection now, because South Carolina's head coach used to run Atlanta's academy. There's that.
Vaguely remember that.
Yeah. You got kids going all over, especially the East Coast. Will Riley's out at Stanford, and he's one to watch. If Will Riley can ramp up the athleticism, he'd be an interesting one in kind of a 6'8" mold, more of an 8 than a 6. But if he can ramp up the athleticism, I think Will Riley would be a really interesting candidate for that sort of thing. It's just, you have to see. I mean, look, I mean, all of this will change because guys develop at different times. They did.
Most certainly. A couple of odds and ends before we go, since apparently the match has probably started, and we'll keep an eye on it on social media. Hugo Lloris,
it's behind closed doors. Don't freak out, y'all.
Yeah, so it's on Twitter. We'll get the occasional updates. Hugo Lloris out the next 6 to 8 weeks with a knee injury. Suffered it in the 1-0 win over Manchester City last Sunday. Speaking of Manchester City, they have hired a lawyer, Lord Panic KC, to defend them in their allegations. And apparently, the guy's wage is the same as Kevin De Bruyne's.
Okay.
Good daily rate if you can get it. Carlos Corberán got a new West Brom contract through the summer of 2027, so Leeds United can't chase after him. And gossip, rumor, and innuendo, we got that kind of stuff. Viewing stuff today for those of you that want to watch the sport and not listen to folks talk about it. Let's see, really quickly. Soccer on TV. We'll go through the TV grid. Copa Libertadores at BN at 9, 7 o'clock. You can get that on Fanatis, fntz.co/soccer down here. Helps out the show, helps you out in looking at stuff that you wouldn't have the chance to otherwise. FS2 has Coupe de France, Lyon and Lille at 12:15, and the Club World Cup, Al-Ahly and Real Madrid at 2. Manchester United, Leeds United is also going on. BN Sports is Espanol, the simulcast on Copa Libertadores. Club World Cup once again on Fox Deportes. Goal TV has the Dutch Cup. You can get that on Fanatis as well. PSV and Emmen at 12:45. Feyenoord and NEC at 3. Feyenoord's coach is one of the two guys that is being mentioned for the opportunity at Leeds. And Manchester United and Leeds also going on Universo. German Cup, ESPN Plus, is at Nuremberg, Fortuna Düsseldorf at noon, Bochum and Borussia Dortmund at 2:30. So that's a show. Enjoy your social media. We'll be back at it again tomorrow. And thanks for all of you guys for all of your thoughts and comments on a Wall Pass Wednesday. Thanks to Dylan Butler. Thanks to Bart Keeler joining us from Tampa. Tomorrow, it's Thursday Thoughts, whatever's on your mind as we go forward. Programming notes, once again, we mentioned that, let's see, what did we mention? Oh, Prim and Proper is back later today. Also on the board tomorrow, a couple of interviews. We catch up with Jack Collison in a 1v1, find out how life is for him up in Huntsville at Huntsville City. And Mauricio Ruiz, who has been added to the Jacksonville, Florida USL group. And he's going to have a unique position where he's going to help on the field and off. So Mauricio Ruiz, Jack Collison, those tomorrow. We'll try and catch up with Nico Moreno as well before Friday, which brings back our friends from Beyond Goal. So once again, Prim and Proper later today. Thanks to Dylan. Thanks to Bart. Thanks to Jarrett. Thanks to y'all for hanging out with us. Go stare at social media as we find out what happens with Atlanta and Cruz Azul in their morning kick behind closed doors. Since it's the end of the show, once again, thanks to all of you guys for making the show what it is every single day. Mucha plati, I'll play it safe. It's the end of the show. That means I get to do this. We'll see you 9:05 tomorrow morning.